What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Young Brother of Soul podcast show. And guess what? It is me, your guy, the Young Brother of Soul. First and foremost, what I want to say is I still and want to thank everybody that has been supporting me throughout my podcast channel. To be honest with y'all, yeah, I love doing the podcasting, man. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. And like I said, I still didn't forget about the ones that definitely want to be interviewed on the Young Brother of Soul podcast show. Trust and believe it will happen. Don't know when, but it will happen. So, as y'all can see, and I'm going to keep it real with y'all, it is so boring without football season. Yeah, I said it. It's real boring without football season because my hometown basketball team, the Philadelphia 76ers, that's going to be another video that I'm going to talk about. Well, probably when the season ends. Yeah. And then, of course, baseball season is getting ready to start soon. So hopefully the Phillies will do something. I don't know. And then again, the Flyers, well, they're young, so, yeah. Excuse me. That's all I'm going to say. But anyway, so on today's episode on the Young Brother of Soul podcast show, what I'm going to be talking about is, of course, it's going to be about the NFL. But in the NFL, it is going to be NFL controversial moments, as I should say, in the NFL. Now, as we all know, controversial moments, well, as I should say, just doesn't happen in the NFL. It can also happen in basketball. It can also happen in baseball. It can also happen in hockey, soccer, any sport that you can name. It can even happen in the WWE, wrestling. Well, that's another thing we might talk about. The Montreal Screwjob, of course, which is still, to this day, is the most controversial moment in wrestling history. Leave a comment and let me know if you agree with me or not. But controversial moments in the NFL. Controversial moments. Oh boy. Now we all know that there are controversial moments with championship games, controversial teams relocation, controversial moments, of course, with players, coaches, and till this day, even if controversial calls were bad during the NFL back in the 70s, the 80s, 60s, the 90s, no matter what time it was, controversial calls are still bothering certain teams and certain players. Now, we already know that there are some bad ref calls, and there are some teams that have controversial moments that they're always in the spotlight, but some way and somehow they still win a championship, well, Super Bowl, as we should say. Controversial moments, oh man, like I said, they are one of the most hurtful but most talked about things in sports history. Like I said, we're going to be talking about controversial moments in the NFL. Starting on the list, one of the most controversial moments in the NFL is the 1925 NFL Championship. Now, some people may know, or some people may not know about this controversial moment. The Pottsville Maroons were a NFL team in Pottsville, PA. They clearly won the 1925 NFL championship. They defeated the Chicago Cardinals. Now, believe it or not, after they won the championship, which they clearly won fair and square, the next week they played against a Notre Dame All-Star team, and the NFL was not having it. No, they were not having it. And not only that they were not having it, back then it was about the money. It was 1925. The NFL wasn't making as much money like they do now, especially with the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl commercials. Well, they stripped them from their championship and gave it to the Chicago Cardinals, that the team that they beat. And that is why, till this day, well, now they're the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals are having bad luck because of the 1925 NFL championship. Or should I say the Arizona Cardinals are cursed? Yeah, they're cursed because of that controversial moment in the NFL. I mean, like I said, it was about the money. They wasn't making as much money like they are today. So why take their championship from them? Well, they did. And not only that they took their championship from them, the Pottsville Maroons were disbanded as a team, and they have never been back in the NFL ever since. Well, they relocated to another city, but they wasn't the same like they were in Pottsville. And they never came back to the NFL. Talk about controversial. That is why the Arizona Cardinals are going through what they're going through. And not only that, they are the NFL team that has the longest championship drought in the NFL. Even though they won a championship in 1947, but they still have the longest championship drought in the NFL. Yeah. Another controversial moment, what I want to talk to you guys about in the NFL, team relocations. Now, certain teams relocate, for better marketing, better fan support, and of course for a new stadium. Well, this team, and believe it or not, this team relocation was so controversial, fans to this day are still hurt and they're still upset the way how they moved. And the way how they moved, they did it overnight. And that team is, ladies and gentlemen, the Baltimore Colts relocating to the city of Indianapolis. Now, we already know what happened in that situation. Colts owner then, Robert Irsay, or should I say Bob Irsay, one of them, they were father and son. He clearly wanted a new stadium for the Colts in Baltimore. Now, yeah, I understand getting a new stadium, it's a lot. It costs a lot, and of course you got to break the ground, and it takes a few years. Yeah, I understand that. But their stadium was outdated. And not only that it was outdated, they had it for like 30, 35 years. Well, 1984, the Colts moved from Baltimore to Indianapolis. Well, they became the Indianapolis Colts. And Baltimore was without a football team for 13 years. That is until another controversial move, which fans are still upset about, even though they got their team back within a few years later, is the Cleveland Browns relocating to the city of Baltimore, where they became the Baltimore Ravens. So, we all know what happened with that situation. Baltimore, Cleveland, Baltimore. They wanted a new stadium. So they didn't get it. So then owner Art Modell relocated the Browns to Baltimore. Not only that, those were the original Cleveland Browns that started from the 1940s. Cleveland was so hurt. That is until the year 1999, where the Cleveland Browns were brought back to the NFL. And not only that, Cleveland fans were hurt when they saw the Baltimore Ravens win the Super Bowl 4 years after they came into the league. So, well, relocated, as I should say. And like I said, I talked to a couple Baltimore, well, these two guys were from Baltimore. And they said to this day, they are still upset that the fact that the Colts, not that they left, the way how they left, even though they got a new football team, it still hurts to this day. And that is why that is the most controversial team relocation in the NFL till this day. And of course, Cleveland to Baltimore is number 2 controversial move. And then of course, number 3, well, the LA Rams to St. Louis, the St. Louis Rams to LA. I mean, they won a Super Bowl in St. Louis, then they won a Super Bowl in LA. Well, yeah, we're just going to leave it at that with the Rams. So, another thing, what I want to talk about is controversial moments in the NFL. The Bounty Bowl. Now, a Bounty Bowl, of course, is when you play your defensive players extra money to hit or hurt the opposing opponents that are coming to your hometown or whatever. They get paid extra money. A Bounty Bowl has been going on for like quite some time. I mean, clearly things have been going on for a very long time. Well, there was a Bounty Bowl back in 1989 between my hometown team, the Philadelphia Eagles, and of course our divisional rival, the Dallas Cowgirls. So yeah, well, they claimed that our players would pay extra money to hit the Cowgirls players and this and that. I mean, yeah, they did, but well, 1989, I wasn't born yet, so I'm gonna just leave it alone. But the most recent, until this day, Bounty Bowl scandal that everybody talked about, until this day, this team has not been the same ever since they got caught with the Bounty Bowl scandal. And that team is, ladies and gentlemen, the New Orleans Saints. In 2012, the New Orleans Saints were caught, or should I say, somebody ran their mouth stating that the 2009 New Orleans Saints, which that team did win Super Bowl 44, but those defensive players were paid extra money to hurt their opponents. Prime example, the defensive coordinator, Greg Williams, who was suspended the whole year for 2012. And not only that, some defensive players on that 2009 Saints team were suspended for the 2012 season. Prime example, the 2009 divisional round between the Arizona Cardinals and the New Orleans Saints. I'll never forget a play when they picked off Kurt Warner and they ran it back and somebody hit Kurt Warner so hard his body flew. And that was the last game that Kurt Warner ever played in the NFL. And that is until the 2009 NFC Championship, where they played against the Minnesota Vikings and Brett Favre and Adrian Peterson. Well, they were beating up Brett Favre real bad. Yeah, they did. And ever since they were found out about the Bounty Bowl with the New Orleans Saints, the Saints have not been the same. They only won one Super Bowl, one appearance, and that was the last time that the Saints ever been to the Super Bowl. That 2012 Bounty Bowl really messed them up. Now, is that a curse? Don't know. But like I said, the Saints have not been the same. No, they haven't. No. Now, going on with the list, as I should say, controversial calls. Of course, controversial calls are always going on in the NFL. Bad calls by the referees. Bad penalties. And not only that, you have some players that go through a lot of controversial moments, meaning domestic violence, drugs, murder, anything. There are so many players that have been going through so much. Some of them got suspended. Some of them got cut. Some were given a second chance. But there's always controversial moments with NFL players individually. Now, starting off the list with a controversial call in the NFL, the Immaculate Reception. Now, the Immaculate Reception is one of the most controversial moments in the NFL that they claim. Now, from what I'm seeing, or what I'm saying is, that was a 1972 divisional playoff game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Oakland Raiders. Now, the Steelers were down by 1 point, 7-6. It was 22 seconds left in the game. Terry Bradshaw threw the ball. The ball bounced off the player. Well, y'all get what I'm saying. And then legendary running back, Franco Harris, came up, or ran up as I should say, caught the ball and ran it in for the game-winning touchdown. Now, a lot of Raiders players were stating that the tip of the ball hit the ground while he caught it. Now, believe it or not, if you think about it, and if you look at that play, what do they show? They only show Franco Harris going like this. They never show if the ball, or did it, or may the tip of the ball hit the ground. If you look at it, you really don't see it. No, you don't. But, excuse me. Leave a comment, let me know what y'all think. The only way that they knew that that was an incompletion or a completion, the Raiders, the Steelers, and the referees in Pittsburgh, 1972 divisional round. And that is still talked about to this day. One of the most controversial moments in the NFL, the Immaculate Reception. Well, the Steelers will go on and win the game 13-7, so yeah. They advanced to the AFC Championship. Another NFL controversial call is the Holy Roller. Now, this game goes back to 1978. It was between the Oakland Raiders. It seems like the Raiders are always in a controversial moment. The Oakland Raiders and the San Diego Chargers. Now, the Oakland Raiders were actually down 20-14 within 10 seconds. Yeah. And not only that, Ken Stabler, who was a legendary quarterback of the Oakland Raiders, the way how that ball, he had the ball, and it did kind of look like he flipped it, like made it go forward. They called it a fumble. The ball rolled and rolled and rolled, and tight end Dave Casper rolled onto the ball into the end zone, and the Raiders won the game 21-20. I mean, if you look at that game, it clearly looked like Ken Stabler threw the ball forward. Now, if it's forward, it's an incompletion. But if it's, if the ball comes out of your hand before going forward, or that's a fumble. Well, referees called it a fumble. Raiders win the game. Raiders win the game. Yeah. Yeah. Another controversial moment is in the NFL controversial call. The 1979 AFC Championship game. That game definitely had a controversial moment. Not only that it was a controversial moment, it was between the Houston Oilers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, that was during the Pittsburgh Steelers 70s dynasty in the NFL. Now, believe it or not, they defeated the Houston Oilers in the AFC Championship the year before that, 34-8. But in this AFC Championship, the Steelers wasn't really looking for a blowout. They were looking for to be more careful because the 79 Oilers was actually better than the 78 Oilers. Now, the Oilers were down 17-10. 17-10. And they threw the ball downfield. Quarterback Dan Pastaverde, I can't pronounce his name. Correct me if I'm wrong. Leave a comment. He threw the ball to the referee, wide receiver Mike Renfro. He caught the ball with both feet and bounced. I seen it, highlights. He made sure his left foot touched the ground with his right foot. He caught it. And it would have been a game tying 17-17. They took so long to call that game. Call, as I should say. I was about to say game. To call that call, that play. And it was incomplete. That definitely is one of the most controversial moments in the NFL. You cannot tell me that that was not a touchdown. If they would have had instant replay like they do now, oh, that definitely would have been a touchdown. But they called it an incompletion. And not only that they called it an incompletion, I believe they kicked the field goal, but the Steelers would score a late touchdown. They would go on and win the AFC Championship and go on and win the Super Bowl that year. Oh, boy. Houston, we have a problem because they definitely were robbed from that AFC Championship. Oh, those referees. Boy. Another controversial call in the NFL. Music City Miracle. Now, this is the game, 1999 wild card game between the Buffalo Bills and the Tennessee Titans. Now, the Titans were actually down by 1 point, 16-15. Now, the Bills kicked the ball off, and what happened? They so-called ran a kick return for a touchdown. The ball was caught by the tight end. I forgot his name. Leave a comment. And then he threw the ball to the wide receiver, Kevin Dyson. Now, a legal pass, you have to throw it backwards. Well, they threw it to the side, and he tried to make it like it was backwards. Well, the referee said, no, that wasn't illegal, and the Titans would go on and win the game, and they would advance. Buffalo fans were so pissed, even the Buffalo players. That definitely was an illegal pass. It wasn't behind. It was forward. Can you imagine if they would have never called that? I don't think Tennessee would have played, definitely would have played in the Super Bowl. Yeah. It was either a wild card or a divisional game. Correct me if I'm wrong, like I said. Just leave a comment. Tell me what y'all think. Correct me. Oh, boy. Another controversial call in the NFL, the Burt Emanuel catch. Now, this was the 1999 NFC Championship game between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the St. Louis Rams. Of course, the St. Louis Rams won the game, but before the end of the game, quarterback Sean King threw the ball to wide receiver Burt Emanuel, 11-yard pass. He caught the ball, and then they had to do instant replay because they claimed that the ball or the tip of the ball hit the ground. They looked at it and they said it was an incompletion. That is why to this day in the NFL, when you catch the ball, sometimes the ground can't help you catch the ball as long as you have full control. Well, they called it an incompletion. And I believe if they would have never called it an incompletion, that game definitely would have been way different than what it was. And maybe the Rams wouldn't win that NFC Championship. But, yeah, they yeah, they they called it an incompletion, and the Rams would go on and they would win the Super Bowl that year. Like I said, that is why they call it the Burt Emanuel catch, or Burt Emanuel rule. That's why sometimes when you catch the ball, you got to make sure your hand is under the ball, so they won't call it an incompletion. That definitely is one of the most controversial moments in the NFL. Another controversial call in the NFL, Bottlegate. Now, this was in the 2001 regular season game between the Cleveland Browns and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, Cleveland, I believe, was down by 2. And it was a couple seconds within the fourth quarter. They were driving down the field. And not only that they were driving down the field, they threw a pass to the receiver. And the way how he caught it, it did look like the ball rolled, but it looked like he had full control. Well, they will go on and run another play in that game. Now, the NFL rules is you cannot go back to that play once another play is ran, which Cleveland did. They had the ball, they threw the ball on the ground for incompletion. But the referees went back and reviewed that play, that catch, and they called it an incompletion. And fans were so pissed that they threw bottles onto the field, and they called the game off, said the game was over with, and they gave the game to the Jacksonville Jaguars. That is why the NFL commissioner at that time called and said they got to go back on the field, they got to run the time. Like I said, NFL rules state that once a play is already ran before that play, you cannot go back to that play. You have to keep going. And they also claim that the referees were trying to stop it to review that. That's why to this day, if they feel as though that the play is incompletion or whatever, that's why teams run another play so the other teams won't go back to review. That's how you do it. But NFL rules is once that play is over and they do another play and that play is over with, you cannot go back. Poor Cleveland Browns fans. Poor Cleveland Browns fans. Another controversial call in the NFL. The tuck rule. Now, everybody knows, well, this was the 2001 divisional round between the Oakland Raiders, boy, poor Raiders fans, and the New England Patriots. Now, the Raiders were visiting the Patriots, and not only that, it snowed in that game. Cornerback Charles Woodson, well, they were up 10-3. 13-10. I'm sorry, 13-10. Now, it was a minute and some change left in the fourth quarter. Cornerback Charles Woodson did a cornerback's blitz. Safety blitz. DB blitz. Y'all know what I'm saying. And Tom Brady, before he hit him, he did pump the ball, but he brought his hand back and Charles Woodson hit him. That, ladies and gentlemen, was a fumble. That was a fumble. I'm not just saying that because I hate the Patriots. Well, we're going to talk about them a little later. I'm not just saying that because that clearly was a fumble. Even Tom Brady admitted. They reviewed it, and the referee said the quarterback's arm was going forward, and it is an incompletion pass. That is why, to this day, in the NFL, if the quarterback's arm is going forward, it is an incomplete. But if it's going like this and the ball comes out, that is a fumble. That is why it's called the tuck rule to this day. And that is definitely one of the most controversial calls in the NFL. And everybody till this day still talks about the tuck rule game. And not only that, like I said, Tom Brady admitted that it was a fumble. Now, can you admit it? If that would have never been called back, we probably would have never seen the dynasty of the Patriots. Well, like I said, we're going to talk about them a little later. Another controversial call in the NFL is the 2002 NFC wildcard game between the New York Giants and the San Francisco 49ers. Now, believe it or not, the Giants were actually up 38-14 in that game. They had the game won. Well, for some reason, the 49ers actually made a comeback to that game, and they won the game 39-38. But it was still a couple seconds left. The Giants had a chance to kick a game-winning field goal. Well, it was a bad snap. The holder threw the ball to an eligible offensive line. They threw the ball. Clearly, you could see the 49ers player grab his jersey. That was pass interference. But guess what? They didn't throw the flag against pass interference. They threw the flag stating that the Giants had 12 men on the field. And after the game, what happened? The NFL, the referees of that game, they admitted they messed up for that pass interference call that should have been called. And the Giants lost the game, and the 49ers went on to the divisional round. That definitely should have been called pass interference. But they called 12 men on the field for the Giants. So, yeah. Even head coach at the time, Steve Mariucci, was like, bummer. He knew that was pass interference. But they didn't call it. So the Giants lost the game and the 49ers moved on. Another controversial call in the NFL, Super Bowl 40. Now, Super Bowl 40 was one of the most controversial Super Bowls in history. It was between the Seattle Seahawks and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, the Seahawks were actually favored to win that game, even though the Steelers, to me, was the better team. But they had so many penalties on the Seahawks to give that game to Pittsburgh. Not only that, they had a offensive pass interference from receiver Darrell Jackson. That was ticky-tacky. That did not look like no pass interference. Then you had holding on the offensive lineman. Clearly, the Steelers' defensive lineman was offsides. Sean had no choice but to hold. And then, of course, you had the interception that Matt Hasselbeck threw to Ike Taylor, and they called that illegal chop block or illegal tackle. Come on, man. The referees, they admitted after the Super Bowl that they did some bad calls in that game, and they wish they could take it back. Well, apparently they didn't, and the Steelers were going and win Super Bowl 40, 21-10. So, yeah, definitely a controversial moment in the NFL, Super Bowl 40. Even head coach Mike Holmgren said, I knew it's going to be tough playing against the Steelers, but I didn't think it would be tough playing against the people in the black and white stripes. So, yeah, that was definitely a controversial Super Bowl. Lord have mercy. Another controversial call in the NFL is the 2012 Hail Mary. Now, the 2012 NFL season definitely was very interesting because we had replacement referees, meaning that the original or regular referees of the NFL were on a lockout because of their contract. Well, there was so many bad calls from these replacement referees. It definitely had to go back to the 2012 Monday night game between the Seattle Seahawks. Boy, the Seahawks will go through some controversial moments too. And the Green Bay Packers. Now, the Green Bay Packers were actually leading that game 12-7. And it was in, I believe, 8 seconds left into that game. Well, rookie quarterback at the time, Russell Wilson, threw a deep pass. Clearly, you could see that the Seattle Seahawks offensive pass interference, and then it looked like the Green Bay Packer intercepted it, and then it looked like the receiver of the Seattle Seahawks was fighting over the ball. Yeah, I think that was an interception, but they said it was a touchdown, and the Seahawks will win that game. And that, ladies and gentlemen, definitely was the last time that the replacement referees were refereeing in the NFL. We got the regular referees back, thank God, because, oh, Lord, like I said, that was a very interesting football season. Yeah, definitely was. Fail Mary, Lord have mercy. Another controversial call in the NFL. The 2018 NFC Championship game. Now, that game was between the LA Rams, I was about to say St. Louis, LA Rams and the New Orleans Saints. Now, believe it or not, the Saints actually had a great season that year. And they were up 23-20 with the minute and 45 left in the fourth quarter. And everybody still talks about this to this day. Drew Brees threw the ball to his wide receiver. He was open. And the Rams defensive back, Nakobe Roman, whatever his name was, that was pass interference. He got there too early. He was beat. He even admitted Nickel Roby. And he did a helmet to helmet. He hit the player, and the player fell on the ground. And the refs did not throw the flag for pass interference. That was crazy. Everybody talked about that. Saints fans were so hurt. Well, like I said, the Saints have not been the same since the 2012 Bounty Bowl. So they had to settle for a field goal. Gave the ball back to the Rams. They kicked the game time to go to overtime. Drew Brees threw an interception. The Rams would go on and kick the game-winning field goal, and they would go on and play Super Bowl 53, which is definitely one of the most boring Super Bowls in Super Bowl history. Yeah, that definitely should have been pass interference, but they didn't call it, so yeah. Another controversial call in the NFL. Dez Bryant catch. Now, this was a divisional game between the Dallas Cowgirls and the Green Bay Packers. Dallas Cowboys. Y'all know what I'm saying. And they were down 21-26. Now, Tony Romo threw the ball to Dez Bryant. Dez actually did caught it. And not only that, they said that he didn't have full control. That was a catch. And he tried to reach over the goal line. They said it was incompletion. And the Green Bay Packers were going to advance to the NFC Championship game. Well, about that, I'm going to talk to y'all about that a little later with the Dallas Cowboys because, yeah. That definitely was a catch. Even though I don't like the Dallas Cowgirls, but that definitely was a heck of a catch by Dez Bryant. So, yeah, definitely controversial. Definitely. Another controversial, well, as I should say, team that has been getting in so much trouble, but nothing happened to them, and that is the New England Patriots with Spygate and Deflate. Now, in 2007, the New England Patriots were caught cheating. Yeah, they cheated, and I don't care what y'all Patriots fans say. They were caught recording other teams' plays for practice. And if you think about it, the Super Bowls that they won, Super Bowl 36, 38, and 39, they knew what plays that their opponents were doing. That's why they won those games. Well, they got caught, and they were going to lose Super Bowl 42 and 46. That is until 2015. AFC Championship. Colts, Patriots. Tom Brady got caught cheating by deflating footballs. Well, he got suspended in 2016, the first 4 games, and then he will win the Super Bowl again. So, yeah, his 5th Super Bowl. He would actually win the Super Bowl in 2014, too, Super Bowl 49. That's when the Deflategate happened. Yeah. The Patriots always got caught cheating, but nothing happened to them. And they would go on and win 6 Super Bowls. Thank God for Eli Manning twice, and thank God for my hometown team, Nick Foles. So, yeah, we definitely got them. And the Patriots are not the same without Tom Brady, even though I didn't really care too much for Tom Brady because they cheated. But he is a good quarterback. Yeah, I admit it. But, yeah, he's sort of loser too. But, yeah, he has his moments. And Bill Belichick. And, of course, there's the Kansas City Chiefs. So, yeah. Referees always find a way for the Chiefs to win. That is until Super Bowl 55, Tampa Bay, and Super Bowl 59, my hometown Eagles. Of course, Super Bowl 57. I'm not just saying that because I'm an Eagles fan, but that so-called defensive holding, that was not holding. And not only that, it was under 2 minutes. Should have let him play, but that's why we got our revenge. Another team that goes through so many controversial moments in the NFL. Maybe it's because of the curse, but for some reason, this team always gets screwed by the refs. And that team is, ladies and gentlemen, the Detroit Lions. For some reason, the Detroit Lions are definitely cursed because of Bobby Lane. Some example of the curses by Bobby Lane are being screwed by the referees. Prime example, 2010, week 1. They played against the Chicago Bears. Now, Calvin Johnson caught the game-winning touchdown. That actually is the Calvin Johnson rule. He went up for the ball, came down, and put the ball down. That was a catch. I mean, his body was in bounds. Everything was in bounds. Well, after he put the ball down, it was called incomplete, and that's why they made the Calvin Johnson rule. Another moment, 2012 Thanksgiving, they played against the Houston Texans, and not only that, they were up 20-14, I believe, something like that. The Houston Texans running back Justin Forsett, he was down. His arm was down and his knee was down while he got touched. And he got up and he ran that ball in for 81 yards for a touchdown. And believe it or not, the referee said the play is unreviewable and the Texans will go on and win that game. That is why the Detroit Lions fans do not like the referees. That was a disgrace, and he was down. His forearm and his knee, he was down. 2014 regular season game. They won this game. They beat the Atlanta Falcons 22-21. But Matt Ryan threw an interception. The defensive back ran it back for 103 yards for a touchdown. They claimed that was pass interference. And then Matt Ryan did an illegal chop block tackle and it offset. That was ridiculous. Then there's the 2014 wild card game against the Dallas Cowgirls. This game, to this day, I will never forget this game. Everybody talked about it. It was between, well, you already know who I already said, as I should say. They were up 20-17. It was 3rd and 1. They should have ran the ball, which is why I don't understand why they threw it. Matthew Stafford threw the ball to tight end Brandon Pettigrew, and Cowboys linebacker pass interference, Anthony Hitchens, whatever his name is, he clearly pass interfered. They threw the flag. They called pass interference, and they picked up the flag and said there is no pass interference. That is why, to this day, what goes around comes around. That is why Dez went through that controversial call, and that's why they called it an incompletion, because the Detroit Lions got robbed by the Dallas Cowboys in that game, and they clearly said that was pass interference, which everybody saw. Even the commentator said, why are they picking up the flag? That is why what goes around comes around. That's why Dez went through that controversial. They picked up pass interference. I never seen that a day in my life. And then, of course, there was the 2015 where Calvin Johnson was about to score, but he fumbled the ball by Cam Chancellor against the Seattle Seahawks. And Seattle Seahawks linebacker KJ Wright punched the ball out of the end zone, which was illegal. And the Seahawks will go on and win that game. Oh, boy. Poor Lions fans. Poor Lions fans. And then there's the 2017 regular season game against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Falcons were leading the whole time in that game, and the Lions drove down the field. Now, believe it or not, the Lions actually threw a touchdown pass from Matthew Stafford to Golden Tate. They claimed that he was short. He was not touched. He was not touched. And it was 8 seconds left in the game. And what happened? They said that it was a touchdown. Then they called it, said it's changed. He was touched. He was down, which he wasn't. And then they said, since it was 8 seconds with no timeouts, they said this will be a 10-second runoff. And the game is over. Lions fans were pissed. You hear me? They were pissed. Even Matt Ryan was like, holy sh... Blah, 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 blah. It's the curse of Bobby Lane. But yeah, this definitely is an NFL team that goes through so many controversial moments. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your controversial moments or controversial calls in the NFL. Now, before we end this video, I'm going to need y'all to do me a favor. Make sure y'all subscribe, hit that thumbs up, leave a comment, hit that notification button, and be prepared for more episodes of the Young Brother of Soul podcast show. There are always controversial moments, like I said, in each sport. Why? Don't know. When will it stop? Don't know. Rigged? Of course there's always rigged moments for this team or that player to get the shine and everything. That always happens. But yeah, those are your controversial moments in the NFL. Now, another thing what I also want to say is thank y'all for the support. And like I said, make sure y'all tune in for some new episodes of the Young Brother of Soul podcast show. And can't wait till football season starts again. It is so boring without football. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of this episode. Like I said, don't forget to subscribe, hit that thumbs up, leave a comment, and hit that notification button. Tell me what are other controversial moments that I left off this list. Leave a comment, let me know, because there are so many hurtful moments. But it happens. It happens. Thank you, and enjoy your night.